Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tiger podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. After a huge Lions victory, we've both been celebrating Days of Roar after dark. How you feeling today, buddy? That was quite the game.
What a game. I mean, the Lions beat the Vikings 31-9 to secure the NFC's number 1 seed in the postseason for the first time in franchise history. How about Jahmyr Gibbs? 4 touchdowns. How about the Lions defense, a depleted Lions defense, holding the Vikings to 0 for 4 in the red zone? An impressive game all around. I think the Lions came out and they made a statement, and now here we go. March towards the Super Bowl. That's all that matters now.
So you do podcasts with a beat writer. You get a beat writer synopsis immediately after the game in 2 seconds like it was nothing. My shout out goes out to 2 people tonight. Number 1, my shout out goes out to Aaron Glenn. What a damn game plan. Sam Darnold, you didn't stand a chance, buddy. There was going to be 6 on you at all times. And I think we saw the Sam Darnold that played for the New York Jets tonight because they made him play like he was playing for the New York Jets. But shout out to the OG. You want to aspire to how to build a football team. I think that Brad Holmes is about 1 inch from being in the Hall of Fame. That's a pretty special company. What he's done is something I'd love to talk about. You know, I used to do a podcast about team building and how to build a team in the 4 ways you have to supplement your roster. Brad Holmes has touched on every one. He's killed every one. It's impossible to build a championship team without using multiple ways to do it. So he is the OG. What do you got to say about that, Ev?
All I got to say is you got to keep tabs. Freep.com. Look for Jeff Seidel's story. There's going to be something coming out here before the playoffs start. I can't say too much about it, but it's going to dive into a lot of things that you just talked about, kind of uncovering the layers behind what the Lions have been able to do, how they've been able to get there, culture building, team building, everything from the top all the way down. We got a lot of good stuff, Freep.com. You got to make sure you read it, but then keep an eye out for what Jeff has coming because it's going to be something really good.
Yeah, exciting night. So to be honest with you, it's so baseball week in review this week. It's all Lions all the time, baby. That's how a championship team does it. They bury you. They gave him a chance and they got buried for it. All right, so let's jump into question 1 of the big 2. It's the winter. It's January. It's the slowest baseball time of the year, unless you're the Detroit Tigers, waiting to see what your team's going to look like after a unexpected playoff run. So, Ev, what's your 3 New Year's resolutions for the Detroit Tigers in 2025?
I want to give a quick review of my 2024 New Year's resolutions before we look at 2025, just to kind of recap how we did with last year's resolutions. I had 3 of them last year for 2024. It was sign Alex Bregman, let Jackson Joe make his MLB debut, and stockpile shortstops to replace Javier Baez. So the Tigers were 2 for 3 on my 2024 resolutions, and they could be 3 for 3 if they sign Alex Bregman. We'll see about that. They obviously didn't sign him in 2024, but they still could sign him in the 2024/25 offseason. So we'll see about that. But that's what it was last time around. And as for the 2025 New Year's resolutions for the Tigers, extend or trade Tarik Skubal, develop the shortstop of the future, and prove the 31-11 run wasn't a fluke. So I got 3 again in 2025. Extend or trade Tarik Skubal, develop a shortstop of the future, and prove the 31-11 run wasn't a fluke.
Is it my turn or do you want to discuss yours?
I mean, if you want me to go on my rant, I'll go on my rant.
It's just January. It's 12 o'clock at night. I want to hear the rant.
I mean, the Tigers have to make a decision, right? Number 1, extend or trade Tarik Skubal. Like in 2025, the Tigers have to make a choice. Are you going to extend Tarik Skubal or are you going to trade Tarik Skubal? I think the Tigers should extend Tarik Skubal. But if you're not going to extend Tarik Skubal, then you need to trade Tarik Skubal. That's going to be a very interesting decision to monitor in the 2025 calendar year, especially once we get into the offseason again, meaning November 2025, December 2025. Because the Tigers, they already tried and failed to extend Tarik Skubal. I think that's the number one thing to remember here. That tells me that unless the price is right, Skubal has his eyes on becoming a free agent, and possibly becoming the first pitcher in MLB history to get a $400 million contract. The Tigers are trying to sell Skubal on the concept that the young core of players can win consistently in the future. And the only way to really sell a player on that is to actually win, not just flirt with the playoffs or get back to the playoffs, but it's making a deep run to the ALCS or the World Series. You can't miss the playoffs or get knocked out early and expect Tarik Skubal to believe you're going to have a chance to win multiple championships throughout the duration of his contract extension just because you have Max Clark coming. That doesn't do it. So the Tigers need to show Tarik Skubal that they can win in the present and the future if they're not willing to offer the years and money that he's seeking. And the only way to really convince a player to buy into that is to show them, hey, we're going to win now. And then to actually go out in the field and do it. So, look, if Skubal has years and money in mind that the Tigers aren't comfortable with, so be it. I think we have to trust the vision of Scott Harris. And if the plan of Scott Harris does not call for X number of years and X number of dollars to extend Tarik Skubal, then we have to trust that it's the best path forward. Personally, I think Scott Harris has done enough to show that he can be trusted to lead the organization in the right direction, especially when it comes to pitching. So if you're not going to meet the contract demands of Tarik Skubal, then you have to convince him the Tigers are a place that he can win for a long time. He has to fall in love with winning in Detroit. And to fall in love with winning in Detroit, you have to actually win in Detroit. And they took a step in the right direction last year, but you really got to win. And so it'll be interesting to see if the Tigers are able to do that in 2025. That's why I don't think there's a chance the Tigers will trade Tarik Skubal at the trade deadline unless they're already out of contention for the postseason. For now, I think we can count on the Tigers being in the mix for the postseason. So let's not even start the Tarik Skubal trade deadline talk, at least not yet. I think the trade of Tarik Skubal, that whole discussion becomes more relevant next offseason, especially if the Tigers try and fail again to extend Skubal. If they can't extend him before the 2025-26 offseason, at that point, Skubal's only going to have 1 year of team control remaining. So do you trade him or do you risk losing him for nothing? In that case, if he's already turned down multiple contract extension offers, I think you have to trade him. And I think you'd want to trade him in the offseason rather than at the trade deadline to get the best possible return. It's the difference between 7 months of value and 2 months of value. You look at what the Milwaukee Brewers did with Corbin Burnes. The Brewers traded Burnes, who won the 2021 Cy Young Award, to the Baltimore Orioles last offseason with 1 year of team control remaining. In return, the Brewers got Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. I'm not a DL Hall guy because he can't throw strikes, but I really like Joey Ortiz. It's elite defense at third base, above average speed on the bases, smart swing decisions, elite contact, draws a lot of walks, limits strikeouts. And the Brewers have Joey Ortiz through the 2029 season. The Tigers could get more than that in a Tarik Skubal trade because Skubal is more valuable than a pitcher like Corbin Burnes. And Corbin Burnes just signed a 6-year, $210 million contract with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the Brewers, even after trading Burnes, won the NL Central in 2024. And now I want to make sure people understand that. It's one of the reasons why Matt Arnold, the general manager of the Brewers, won MLB's Executive of the Year award because he took them back to the postseason even after trading their best pitcher in Corbin Burnes. So I think the Tigers have to make the decision. Pay up or win enough to extend Tarik Skubal, or you got to trade him. I love the Tigers to extend Tarik Skubal, but the fact that he is a Scott Boras client and has already turned down an offer and is going to get $400 million if he maintains health and performance, all those things are reasons why I don't think an extension will happen. So you can't wait too long to trade him. That's why I think there's going to become a decision point in 2025. That's where I'm at on my first New Year's resolution. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's a chance in hell they signed Tarik Skubal at this point. You'd come correct when they first started having the discussion at this point in time. I think they already told you what hand they're playing, and I would never expect them to extend Skubal at this point. As far as what I think they need to do about it, I think how good their team is going to be a huge impact on what that decision is going to be. However, if at post 2025, they need to make a deal for Tarik Skubal, all I can say to you is it will be 4 years into the tenure of a Pobo who has made one trade for a major league player. I don't know how good I'm feeling about making a deal for a guy that's one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball. I mean, it's really hard to carry over being the best pitcher in baseball from year to year. That's why I kind of admire Zach Wheeler. Holy smokes, how to be that good for that long. Really, in this era, pretty damn good. But look, guys, I mean, if they're not going to extend him, you got to at least entertain trade offers. And all I'm saying to you is that how do you expect me to have confidence in the guy making a trade who's never made a trade before? I mean, there's not a good reason why, when you run a major league franchise, that 3 years into it, you don't make trades for major league players. It's just not. I just don't really comprehend the idea. So that's my feeling about it. I don't think they're extending them, and I worry to death when they get ready to deal them.
Well, here's my second New Year's resolution. All right. Well, we'll move on from Tarik Skubal. How about this one, though? Develop the shortstop of the future. I think that's extremely important. And we have to talk about Javier Baez, because when we talk about the shortstop situation, we got to talk about the fact that Javi Baez is owed $73 million over the next 3 seasons. He's the highest paid player on the roster. It's $25 million in 2025, $24 million in 2026, and $24 million in 2027. Tigers want to fix him. And I think Scott Harris is determined to fix Javi Baez, and I commend him for that. Like, who has a better chance to fix Javi Baez, Scott Harris or Al Avila? You give me Scott Harris all day, every day when it comes to trying to actually make a difference and fix Javi Baez. I think we also easily forget AJ Hinch was a part of the Javi Baez deal as well. It gets pinned on Al Avila quite a bit, but AJ Hinch traveled the country with Al to pick the shortstop for the Tigers to sign, and then Hinch called Baez a perfect fit and said he couldn't be happier. And owner Christopher Illich called it a turning point for the Tigers. So everyone's fingerprints are all over Javi Baez except Scott Harris. And I think Scott Harris is doing everything he can to fix Javi Baez, and he would earn a lot of respect, not only within the organization, but throughout the entire baseball industry, if he can turn Javi Baez into a serviceable player again. But again, the Harris-led Tigers have been trying to fix Javi Baez for the past 2 seasons. It's easy to keep trying and prolong the inevitable. It's hard to make that tough decision. The Tigers are going to give Javi Baez every opportunity to prove himself in spring training. He's coming back from the right hip surgery. The thought is that the hip surgery could solve the lower back injuries, which in theory would solve the rotational issues when Baez swings. The Tigers are going to test that out in spring training. They're going to give Baez every chance to prove his health and his production. But I think no matter what happens there, the Tigers need to develop a shortstop of the future in 2025. Remember last year, I made my New Year's resolutions for the Tigers, and one of the things was to stockpile options at shortstop. The Tigers did that in 2024, acquiring Trey Sweeney from the Dodgers in the Jack Flaherty trade and selecting Bryce Rayner in the draft. So the Tigers have these shortstop prospects: Kevin McGonigle, Bryce Rayner, Trey Sweeney, and Freneber Montilla. Tigers, please develop one of them, offensively and defensively. Those are 4 top 20 prospects in the organization who can play shortstop. One of those guys needs to become the everyday shortstop of the future. I'm talking about an all-star caliber shortstop, a real dude, someone you know who is going to be your shortstop for 6 seasons once he makes his MLB debut, someone who's going to get paid whenever they become a free agent. Develop that guy. Please develop that guy. My preference is Kevin McGonigle, whom I think is the best position player in the Tigers farm system, even ahead of Max Clark. I don't know if McGonigle can stick at shortstop, but he is determined to make his MLB debut as a shortstop. I think if he can stick at shortstop, he can be the shortstop of the future because he's got the elite hit tool. In Low A Lakeland, McGonigle hit .326 with 4 home runs, 35 walks, and 24 strikeouts across 60 games with 20 stolen bases in 22 attempts. He had a 12.9% walk rate, an 8.9% strikeout rate, an 11.2% whiff rate, and a 22% chase rate. He hit the ball hard. He showed some signs. This guy's only 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until mid-August. But to me, the 11.2% whiff rate really stands out. He just doesn't swing and miss. There's a chance he ends up at second base, and maybe it's more likely than less likely. But if he can stick at shortstop, which is where he spent most of the 2024 season, then this is going to be the shortstop of the future, because I believe he's the total package on offense for all the reasons I already mentioned. Again, he makes smart swing decisions. He makes contact at an elite rate. He has underlying metrics that show developing power. He's 20. He's not going to be 21 until mid-August. I really like Kevin McGonigle. I hope the Tigers can develop him into the shortstop of the future. And if not, it's all on Bryce Rayner. But Rayner's only 19 and hasn't played a game in pro ball. So we won't see Bryce Rayner in the big leagues until 2027 or 2028. Kevin McGonigle, if all goes as planned, is going to make his MLB debut on the opening day roster in 2026. I think McGonigle can be the shortstop of the future for the Detroit Tigers. Do you agree?
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, most of the month of December and even tonight we could discuss this. I think I said on the pod last week, pecking order at shortstop in 2025 is Trey Sweeney, whoever's backing up Trey Sweeney. And after the 1st of probably July, maybe even earlier, Kevin McGonigle, do not be shocked if they need a shortstop badly, is playing shortstop for the Detroit Tigers. That elite of a hit tool. The most interesting thing you'll be able to do going to spring training every day is you have to do some analysis. Is Kevin McGonigle a shortstop? And how much has he filled out? How much has he grown? How much has he recovered from the hamate? And can he play defense being a shortstop? We already know he can probably play defense being a second baseman. But, look, there's always a trade deadline too. And most important thing the Tigers need to do is to be competitive because, how you develop players when you're in the middle of a pennant race and and the things you're willing to risk to do to stay competitive. And when you're 5 games below 500, you play the game much differently. So, but yeah, Bryce Rayner, we don't know if he's a shortstop or a third baseman. They can tell you all they want. He's a shortstop right now, but he hasn't played a game even in the GCL. So, it'll be interesting to see how he does, and I'm a prove-it-to-me kind of guy, all kinds of talent. Cristian Santana used to have a lot of talent. We haven't heard from him too much in 2 years. So you just never know how guys are going to develop.
You mentioned being competitive, and I love that actually because that's New Year's resolution number 3, and it's proved that the 31-11 run wasn't a fluke. People need to remember that on August 10th, the Tigers were on pace for just 75 wins. It would have been the worst record in AJ Hinch's 4 seasons as the Tigers manager. And then they go on this 31-11 run to clinch a spot in the postseason. For context, 31-11 in a full season, that's a pace of 120 wins. The Tigers are not a 120-win team, not even with Alex Bregman. Nobody has ever won 120 games in a single season. The Chicago Cubs in 1906 and the Seattle Mariners in 2001, they won 116 games, which is the record. So the Tigers will not maintain that 31-11 pace, but they need to prove it wasn't a fluke. There were so many late season magical moments. You had the Parker Meadows grand slam in San Diego, Trey Sweeney's catch in Baltimore. Even there was the game where the Tigers trailed by 4 runs while the Twins led by 3 runs. And by the end of the night, the Tigers won and the Twins lost. And so on top of the Tigers going on their crazy run, the Twins crashed and burned. Like, remember, the Tigers wouldn't have even made the playoffs if the Twins had just played 500 baseball in the final couple of weeks. We would have been talking about it as an incredible run by the Tigers, but it was just, it was too little, too late. But the Twins, they crashed and burned. So the Tigers were able to sneak into the playoffs. So how do the Tigers prove it wasn't a fluke when it's impossible to win 120 games? For me, it's simple. You win the American League Central for the first time since 2014. Manager AJ Hinch says that is the goal in 2025, win the AL Central. So that is my expectation for them. And I think it's really the only way to prove that the 31-11 wasn't a fluke. Like, to me, the AL is pretty wide open for the taking in the Central Division. You got the Kansas City Royals. They're legit. Bobby Witt Jr. on offense, some great starters in Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans. Cleveland Guardians, they haven't gotten any better. They've traded Josh Naylor and Andres Jimenez. Minnesota Twins, they haven't gotten any better. But if Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, and Royce Lewis are healthy, then they're dangerous. But the Twins can't ever seem to stay healthy. So to me, it looks like a 2-horse race with the Tigers and the Royals. And if the Tigers get Alex Bregman, then the Tigers are the favorites to win the AL Central. So those are my 3 New Year's resolutions for the Tigers. Extend or trade Tarik Skubal, develop a shortstop of the future, and prove the 31-11 run wasn't a fluke. Mark, before we get to your New Year's resolutions, do you think the 31-11 run was a fluke?
I don't think it's ever a fluke, man. They played the games. They had umpires out there.
Respect.
There was a scoreboard. It wasn't a fluke. They deserve to win. Period. End of story. I'm not even going to discuss it in depth. The answer is it's the major damn leagues. Come on, man. There was another team out there. This, wasn't a barnstorming thing on a bus in a Richard Pryor movie. This was Major League Baseball.
But their roster is not a 120 win caliber roster. Like they got really, really hot for a really long time, and it's unsustainable over a 162 game season.
Get it. Don't care. They won. Period. Not even going to think about it or justify it, or they played great.
All right. What do you got for me?
You see my t-shirt? See what it says? You know what? I got an idea for the 2 of us. We need to make t-shirts that say, if they get Alex Bregman. Okay? That's the name of our t-shirt right here.
If they get Alex Bregman. That should be the new name of our podcast at this point, right?
It should be the name of our podcast until they get Alex Bregman. We're changing it from Days of Roar if they get Alex Bregman. Okay?
It's funny.
It's January, so if this sounds like a Vegas lounge act, it's kind of turned into one. I just want to say, yeah, I think if they get Alex Bregman, if they do get Alex Bregman, I think there'll be a hell of a more interesting, better baseball team. Not maybe in apex methodology, but, the answer is, look, if you're really good, you're going to be really good. And Alex Bregman is going to have some impact on it, but not a massive impact on it. Where I really like Alex Bregman to make an impact is if I think he raises the floor of how good they can be a ton, good enough to make the playoffs, raising your floor, because he's not going to let things snowball in an ugly direction. He's going to get people to be better. He's a culture builder. He's been in the playoffs 7 straight years. 7 straight years or 8 straight years? I forget how long Houston's been in the playoffs, how many years in a row. I think 7 or 8 straight years. But, look, the bottom line is it's now or never. And there's never any deal you make in business. There's rarely a deal that you can call a perfect deal. So my answer is it's more than $150 million and it's less than $200 million. Figure out the 6th year, figure out how everybody should be happy with it. It seems like, from what I've been being told and probably from what you're being told, because you hear a lot better people than I do, he'd like or is more than willing to be here. So my question becomes, can you get the deal done? So, my first 2025 resolution, if they get Alex Bregman. My second, resolution is, look, this is year 4. Nobody wins afraid of losing. Famous saying of me, as taught to me by the great Chris Stapleton. And you can't be afraid to fail. Nobody is great without some failure and confronting the idea you may have some failure along the way. Not making any trades for major league players is almost becoming laughable. And by the way, the last guy that refused to really make trades for a while was Mike Elias. Even he did. He made trades. And by the way, how's the offseason going for one Mike Elias, Baltimore general manager, former golden boy of player development with an overly stocked minor league system who won 100 games? How's the offseason looking for Baltimore right now?
Their fans want more pitching.
Yeah, well, their fans should be asking for more pitching. I got news for you, okay? You better hope Bautista comes back from TJ. That would be a big help for them in the bullpen. But at the same time, you have to build your team multiple ways. You can't always be risk adverse. Nobody's window stays open for 7 years unless you're the Houston Astros. And meanwhile, the architect of that team no longer is in baseball. So all I'm saying to you is dare to be great. Dare to be good, for heaven's sakes. But do something. Do something. Stop driving by and taking things out of the garbage and planting seedlings, and those are all great ways to make a team, but it's not the way to make a championship team. You have to add players to your core from multiple ways. That's all I got to say. It's like a broken record. It's like I feel like a bicycle that has a bent front tire that keeps making me turn left every time we talk about this. And I actually apologize to our listeners because it's just exhausting.
Well, just to clarify on a couple of things that you mentioned, because I do want to make sure that I make a point of it. It's, yes, the Alex Bregman-led Astros, they had made the playoffs in 8 seasons in a row with 7 consecutive appearances in the ALCS before the Tigers stopped them in 2024, 2 World Series championships in that time. And yes, Alex Bregman, Mark, is down to be a Tiger.
Let's go to question 2, the big 2. Should we view the offseason as Alex Bregman or bust for the Detroit Tigers?
I've wrestled with this question a lot because I've heard it a lot on talk radio. I've seen it a lot on social media. I don't think it's a bust of an offseason if the Tigers don't sign Alex Bregman. I don't think it's fair to say that to the Tigers or to president of baseball operations, Scott Harris. But I don't think the Tigers will find what they're looking for anywhere else. And I do think it would be a big miss for an organization that needs an above average third baseman, a legit right-handed hitter, and most importantly, a leader. My point is the Tigers won't get Alex Bregman's leadership anywhere else. No matter where they look, no matter where they turn, whether it's a 1-year deal or a 3-year deal, like whatever else they find out there, they're not going to find Alex Bregman's leadership without Alex Bregman. And the Tigers need a leader like Alex Bregman to take them to the promised land. So reading between the lines, that's how I feel about the situation. Tigers will not get Alex Bregman's leadership anywhere else, and the Tigers need a leader like Alex Bregman. So do I think it's a bust of an offseason if they don't sign him? No, I don't think that's fair, because I think there are other ways that you can upgrade your team. You can go and you can get an Anthony Santan there. You can get a Ha-Sung Kim. You can upgrade the back end of the bullpen. But if you want to make a real impact not only on the field, but also behind the scenes, Alex Bregman is the guy who guarantees you, the ability to do that. Like, he is the guy who is going to help take your culture to the next level. He is somebody that is going to help the Tigers become year in, year out winners. He's going to teach young players how to win and how to win consistently, how to show up every day and post. Like, there is something about Alex Bregman that he brings from the leadership standpoint that's just something special. And now the question just becomes like, all right, does a deal get done or not? Because obviously there's mutual interest. The Tigers want Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman, like I said, is interested in playing for the Tigers. He's down to come to Detroit and play. Bregman has been seeking the 7-year contract worth $200 million. That's dated back to the beginning of the offseason. Tigers have not been willing to pay him $200 million. That's not going to change. But if any team had that type of offer on the table, Bregman would have already accepted it. So it's unlikely Bregman will sign for $200 million. And the Tigers have taken a patient approach in their pursuit. They didn't really prioritize him at the general manager meetings. They turned up the heat at the winter meetings, and they've stuck to an offer that won't jeopardize the long-term goal of sustainable success. And I can respect that. I can respect that Scott Harris has a plan, because again, to me, he's proven enough that I'm willing to say, okay, like, let's see this plan through. And if the plan doesn't include X amount of dollars to Alex Bregman for X number of years, similar to like I mentioned with the Tarik Skubal extension, like if Scott Harris's vision for the Tigers does not align with a certain contract structure that Alex Bregman wants, then I'm fine passing on that. I'm okay with that. But again, I think like you've got to do everything you can to try to make it work and meet in the middle and try to find something that works for both sides, because this guy is a culture changing type player. Now, there is a situation of the fact that you look up and we're getting close to the middle of January. Pitchers and catchers report on February 12th. The first full squad workout is February 17th. And for a star player like Alex Bregman, signing a contract earlier in the offseason is often the best chance to lock in more years and more money. Just look at a guy like Juan Soto. Waiting until later in the offseason, it reduces leverage for the player as teams fill roster spots and their budgets, which then narrows the number of interested teams in a long-term contract. So Bregman is kind of running out of time to sign a big contract. If Bregman signs before February 1st, he's probably getting a deal that's got more years and a higher total value. But if Bregman signs after February 1st, with spring training right around the corner, he's probably signing more of a team-friendly contract with less years, less money, probably some opt-outs, high, annual average value. But that type of contract structure would then invite more teams into the bidding, and that could reduce the Tigers' chances of signing him. Like if Alex Bregman is, if he's forced to sign a 3-year, $100 million contract with back-to-back opt-outs, Tigers aren't going to be the only team willing to do 3 years, $100 million with 2 opt-outs for Alex Bregman. There's going to be a ton of teams in the mix there. So that kind of reduces the Tigers' chance if they wait a little bit too long. So it's a game of cat and mouse between the Tigers and Bregman as both sides are trying to find a middle ground. Like, is it really going to happen? And then you look at the fact that he turned down the offer from the Astros. It was 6 years, $156 million. And now he's not going to reunite with the Astros. So the market then narrows by one team. But you still have the Tigers and maybe the Toronto Blue Jays and maybe the Boston Red Sox, like the New York Mets. If they don't re-sign Pete Alonso, then Mark Vientos moves to first base and there's an opening at third base in the Big Apple for a guy like Alex Bregman to come and fill in. The New York Yankees, they want to have a 3-player competition in spring training with DJ LeMahieu, Oswald Peraza, and Oswaldo Cabrera. But maybe the Yankees get scared and the Yankees say, all right, we really need to spend that money. We lost out on Juan Soto, the one guy who really completes our offseason is a guy like Alex Bregman. So maybe the New York Yankees are still a team to watch. The New York Mets, maybe still a team to watch. The Boston Red Sox, they need a second baseman. You got Rafael Devers. They want him at third base. They don't plan to trade Tristan Casas. That means Bregman would need to play second base, but Bregman has said he's open to switching positions to second base. And as a pull hitter, he would benefit from those dimensions at Fenway Park. So maybe the Red Sox are a good fit for him. And then the Blue Jays, like, they're just trying to get someone to take their money. I think Anthony Santander is probably more of a fit for them. I've already reported the Blue Jays are one of the front runners for Santander, along with the Los Angeles Angels. The Tigers definitely in the mix there, but maybe more as a backup plan to Bregman. If the Blue Jays sign Santander, the chances of Bregman landing in Toronto probably decreases significantly. But at the same time, you look at the Blue Jays and they got to win now. Final year and the contract of both Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Beau Bichette. And right now, the Blue Jays have Ernie Clement at third base. So what team needs a third baseman more than the Toronto Blue Jays? With Vlad Guerrero Jr. on his way out, Beau Bichette on his way out, maybe they go out and get an Anthony Santander, and then they plug their hole at third base, and they really try to make a run at it before you lose Vlad Jr. and Beau Bichette. So the Blue Jays could be a fit. The Red Sox could be a fit. The Mets could be a fit. The Yankees could still be a fit, even though I don't think that's actually going to happen. But still, Yankees got money to spend. Maybe they go and do it. The Tigers, it always has made the most sense. There's the perfect fit with AJ Hinch and with Christian Nea, and the fact that the Tigers have always needed to address third base, and that they need a right-handed hitter at the top of their lineup to really help them out with that key group of lefties they have, led by Riley Green and Parker Meadows and Kerry Carpenter and Colt Keith. Like, you need a real right-handed hitter in there. You got the opening at third base. You got the AJ Hinch connection. You need leadership for a young core. Bregman to Detroit has always made sense. I think it happens. We'll see. Again, we'll see. That's me speculating, I think. Time will tell ultimately. But to get back to the initial question, I'm really curious to hear what you think. I don't think that it's a bust of an offseason that the Tigers don't sign Bregman. But like I said in the very beginning, they will not find what Alex Bregman brings anywhere else. Not on the trade market, not on the free agent market. Alex Bregman is a different type of player because of that leadership. You don't get that anywhere else than by signing Alex Bregman.
If I said to you, hey, it's February 26th, the Tigers are done making adds to the roster. They spent $31 million and they've added Alex Cobb and Gleyber Torres, and that's it. How would you feel about it?
I'm not satisfied. If it's Alex Cobb for $15 million and Gleyber Torres for $15 million, I'm not satisfied if I'm a fan of the Detroit Tigers. Not at all.
So now that we've established...
Actually, I would be infuriated. If I was a fan of the Tigers and it was $15 million for Gleyber Torres, $15 million for Alex Cobb, and that was it. I wouldn't just be disappointed. I would be infuriated.
You remember when they could have traded Eduardo Rodriguez and they didn't? I was for sure unhappy, and you were equally as unhappy. It was kind of botched, to be really blunt about it. So if knowing that, and then the only two adds to the roster after last year were Alex Cobb and Gleyber Torres, it would make you concerned. It would make you concerned. So the answer to the question is, would I be mad if they don't sign Alex Bregman? Hell yeah, I'm going to be mad. Hell yeah. Okay. I don't even want to do this rant anymore. But let me ask you a question. Has Alex Bregman had over 4 WAR the last 3 straight seasons?
He's one of the best players in baseball.
Yes. Has anybody on the Tigers had more WAR in 2024 than Alex Bregman? Besides Tarik Skubal? No position player, right? Riley was 4. Bregman was 4.1. How many players hit more than 26 home runs in 2024? So my point about this is everybody worrying about year 5 and 6. I've said this 100 times. I'm worried about 2025, 2026, 2027. Those are the 3 years I'm worried about. That's my window. Maybe I can squeeze it into 2028. What happens in 2029 and 2030, I don't care about it. You have a $105 million payroll as of today. You have a $6 billion owner. And you know what? I'm not going to be mad at Scott Harris for not signing Alex Bregman. It's not on him. If he had an owner who behaved like an owner, he is the one that is making this decision right now. This last 20 million and extra year that's bothering everybody, it could bother Scott all he wants. And all Chris Ilitch has to do is pick up that phone and go, Scott, I know this bothers you, son, but we're going to do it because I just want to win. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's what my fans deserve, and I want to win. They've gone through a lot the last 10 years, and I'm rich, so I'm going to spend some of my money, the team's money, and everybody at least can have some dreams of having a great time all summer down at Comerica. And that's pretty much how I feel about the Alex Bregman situation. We can get into all the minutia about it, all the things we know, all the things people have told us, all the smart people that have told us things, and how we swung more in the shadow zone. And we can have all these discussions. You and I are great at that. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is sign Alex Bregman, Christopher Ilitch. It's up to you now. Everybody that may be an obstacle, I'll work for you. You're the man who has all the power. And that's kind of how I feel about it, and like you said very well, if he had a $200 million offer, he'd have signed it already. So I think now the two questions are years and money. So it's probably year 6 and it's probably around 180 million. And a lot of smart people who are smart about money have figured out creative ways how to make deals. Everybody's deferring money now.
Here's my favorite Alex Bregman stat, just to put it out there because it's important to talk about, and it speaks to what you had just said, was he ranked 18th among 230 position players with a 14 FWAR from 2022 to 2024. He has been the 18th best player in baseball over the past 3 seasons. Like, this is a guy that you have to go get. 18th best position player over the last 3 seasons. He's a game changer for the Tigers. He makes you an American League Central favorite. He gives you a chance to win the World Series. And also, like, he's going to take your culture to the next level. They've already done a great job of building their culture. They've done a good job of building what they've had from the ground up. Now it's time to take it to the next level. Alex Bregman is the guy that can do that for you, both on the field and behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, bottom line is, who's going to be really mad if they don't come away with Alex Bregman? The best manager in baseball is going to be pretty mad. So, all right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Robert Ford, the radio broadcaster for the Houston Astros, to talk more about Alex Bregman. We'll be back with Robert Ford in 60.
I'd like to welcome Robert Ford, the radio voice of the Houston Astros, to the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. We are going to talk about Alex Bregman, and we're going to talk a lot about Alex Bregman. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been the play-by-play radio broadcaster for the Astros since 2013. So you just celebrated the completion of your 11th season. I want to start with the big picture before we get into Alex Bregman. What has it been like calling games for a team that's been to the postseason 8 years in a row with 7 straight trips to the ALCS, along with 2 World Series championships in that run? How did the Astros build their dynasty, and what's it been like to watch everything unfold over the years?
Well, my first year with the Astros was 2013, and that year they set a record, a club record with 111 losses, and it was their 3rd straight 100-loss season. So there was a plan in place at the time, obviously, to try and be competitive again. But, I mean, teams make plans all the time. They don't always work. In the Astros case, it has. And so 2014, they were a little better. 2015, they kind of surprised everyone by leading the AL West most of the year, wound up being a wild card team. And then, yeah, like you said, 2017 started the run they've been on with 8 straight playoff appearances and 7 straight League Championship Series appearances. So, I mean, it's been impressive to just watch initially how this was built, and then just to watch how it's been sustained. And what is it like to call it? Well, I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun. I mean, calling baseball games is fun regardless, but when you're calling games for a team that wins more often than not and has gone deep in the playoffs more often than not over the last few years, yeah, that makes it even more fun.
I promised our listeners a lot of Alex Bregman talk, so we're going to deliver on that. Let's start here. Where do you think Alex Bregman plays baseball in the 2025 season?
Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be Houston. I don't know exactly where, but I mean, with the Astros trading for Isaac Paredes and with Christian Walker being signed as a free agent, that pretty much locks up the corner infield spots. When they initially traded for Paredes, the door was still open for Bregman to return. Paredes has been mostly a third baseman with Tampa Bay, but he does have experience at first. So, yeah, there was still a possibility that that could happen if Bregman was re-signed. But once Christian Walker was signed previously with Arizona, that pretty much ended that. And Dana Brown, the Astros general manager, even said in the press conference announcing Christian Walker that, in his words, talks with Bregman stalled, was the word that he used. So, I mean, that kind of gives you an idea of where the Astros are at with Bregman. And so it doesn't seem like he's going to be playing in Houston and that he's going to be playing elsewhere in 2025. But I certainly do think that the Astros wanted to bring Bregman back. I mean, like anything, if the price is right, yeah, that's always a big thing, right? But I don't think it was a situation, and Dana Brown and no one else with the Astros has indicated anything otherwise. It wasn't a situation where, they didn't make him an offer or they weren't interested in having him back or anything like that. It wasn't that scenario. I think it just seemed like it was more a situation where they just couldn't agree on terms. And so it looks like Alex Bregman's going to be elsewhere.
Are you surprised he didn't accept the 6-year, $156 million offer that was out there from the Astros? And why do you think he declined it?
No, but I mean, I don't know that anything surprises me anymore in this game, especially when it comes to what offers guys accept, what offers guys turn down. I think one thing to keep in mind is Matt Chapman, who also is a Scott Boras client. He got a $161 million deal from the San Francisco Giants. So, I mean, I would tend to think, I don't know this for a fact, but I would tend to think that if you're Bregman and if you're Scott Boras, same agent who negotiated Chapman's contract with San Francisco, that $161 million, that I could see if you're in that camp where you might think, all right, that's kind of a reasonable starting point. And I don't know if the Astros offer was exactly $156 million. I mean, obviously that's been what's reported. Who knows if the Astros went up from that or how negotiations went. But I think going into Bregman's free agency, I think it was reasonable to assume that Matt Chapman's deal was a starting point.
You know Alex Bregman, you know AJ Hinch, you've seen the Tigers both in the regular season and the postseason. What do you think about Alex Bregman to Detroit? There's a lot of buzz about that.
Well, I mean, obviously whenever a player has a relationship with a key member of an organization, that's always a plus. And Bregman and AJ Hinch obviously do have that. I mean, AJ was Bregman's first manager. I think when you think back to Bregman's first season, when he came up in 2016, he started off, I believe it was 0 for 18. As a matter of fact, if memory serves, he got his first big league hit in Detroit against the Tigers. But I remember through all of that, AJ stuck with him and kept getting asked, well, is Bregman, are you going to bench him? Or are you going to send him back down? And AJ, to his credit, stuck with Bregman. And I think Bregman had a lot to do with that because he wasn't down on himself. He was confident that he would figure it out. It would just take a little bit of time. And he did, obviously, and he has. And it's turned out over the years that Bregman tends to be a slow starter. So AJ's faith was rewarded in Bregman. And I think when you start off a relationship like that, I think that's the sort of thing that a player and a manager don't forget. A player doesn't forget a manager who trusted him and had faith in him when arguably he had little reason to. And a manager doesn't forget a player rewarding that faith. So, yeah, I think the relationship between Bregman and AJ Hinch could certainly be a big factor. And I don't know that anyone's talking about Alex Bregman going to the Tigers without that relationship.
What's it been like covering Alex Bregman over the years? From the number 2 overall pick in the 2015 draft to a 9-year career with the Astros, what stands out to you?
I mean, just nothing but class and professionalism in terms of dealing with the media, in terms of dealing with myself and the other broadcasters, always accessible, always accountable, never made excuses. Yeah, I don't have a bad thing to say about Alex Bregman as a person or as someone to deal with, because he really was someone that you could always count on. If you had a question, if you needed something, you were always going to get an answer from him. And it's funny, I think this is true with a lot of players, but a lot of times I would get Bregman going by talking about something other than baseball. I mean, he's a guy who, he's pretty smart and he has a lot of thoughts and opinions on a lot of different things. He and we've talked politics before, in part because his dad is the district attorney in Bernalillo County, which is the county that includes Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Alex is from. And we've talked about, his dad, and I met his dad, Sam, who's, his parents, his family, they're great as well. He's a really interesting guy, definitely singularly focused on being the best baseball player he can be and trying to find a way to win a baseball game every day. But he's not just that. He also has a lot of other interests. And I think becoming a dad, like what happens to a lot of people, becoming a dad certainly has broadened his horizons and opened his eyes. And I don't know, softened him, but certainly made him more aware of other things and of other people.
Let's talk about the performance on the field. This guy's been worth more than 4 F4 in each of the past 3 seasons. He ranks 18th among all qualified position players in F4 over the past 3 seasons. To you, what makes Alex Bregman a special talent? Like, what sets him apart from other players in the league?
Well, I think the biggest thing with Bregman is that he's always trying to find an edge, and he's always trying to find a way to get better. When he first got to the big leagues, he was a shortstop at LSU, played mostly shortstop in the minor leagues. He gets to the Astros. They had Carlos Correa at the time, who was just coming off a Rookie of the Year season. So obviously Bregman wasn't going to be the shortstop. So he wound up moving over to third base, a position that he didn't have a ton of familiarity with, but he went and attacked it. And he got better and better. And the last 2 or 3 years, he's been a Gold Glove caliber defender. He hasn't won a Gold Glove yet, but he's certainly been a Gold Glove caliber defender. I think this past season was Bregman's best defensive season yet. Now, when I say he's always looking for an edge and always trying to be the best that he can be, the only downside to that is when it comes to Bregman offensively, he's very much a tinkerer. He's a guy who's always tinkering with his swing, tinkering with what he's doing at the plate, just trying to find a way to maybe get a little bit better or something. If he's struggling, try to find a way to get back to where he wants to be or where he feels like he can be. So that can be the one downside. And I think that's part of the reason why Bregman has been a slow starter throughout his career, because he's always tinkering. And I think sometimes it takes him a little while to settle on something that he feels is going to work for him offensively. But I mean, whenever he does struggle, like all players do, it's never for lack of effort. It's never for anything other than the results just haven't been there. So, I mean, that's always been the thing with Bregman. And mention about how accountable he is. I mean, he's always been a guy who you can ask him, hey, what are you working on? What are you trying to do right now? What do you feel you need to do better? And he'll always have an answer.
The Tigers need a third baseman and an impact right-handed hitter, but I'm curious about the leadership factor. What does Alex Bregman bring in the leadership department? I've heard a lot about his leadership, but I don't understand it like you do, I'm sure.
Well, I think the best comment on Bregman's leadership comes from Dusty Baker, who, of course, managed the Astros before Joe Espada. And I saw this quote from Dusty last year, and he said that the great thing about Alex Bregman, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said the great thing about Alex Bregman, Dusty said, he could go to Bregman because he wanted a message to be delivered to the team, or just say to Bregman, hey, could you say something? And he said, not only would Bregman do it, but he said he always knew exactly what to say and who to say it to. So I think that speaks volumes, especially coming from someone like Dusty Baker, who was a leader as a player and obviously has had a long and distinguished career as a big league manager. For Dusty to praise Bregman in that way, someone who's been around a lot of leaders and again has been a leader himself, I think says more than anything that anybody else can say about Bregman and his leadership when it comes to the clubhouse. I think a lot of Bregman's leadership is by example, because you see his work ethic, you see how hard he's working. It's one of those things where, a high tide rises all boats. I think it kind of rubs off on other guys, particularly maybe some of the more impressionable and younger players. Like he's never been, from what I can tell, someone who's always talking in the clubhouse or necessarily a big rah-rah guy or anything like that. He seems like someone who just kind of knows how to pick his spots when it comes to when he says and what he says, or when he says things and what he says. And someone who I think more than anything, if you just follow his lead, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Again, we're with Robert Ford, the play-by-play voice on the radio for the Houston Astros, talking about Alex Bregman. Robert, it seems like some of the power numbers are declining. I don't think Alex Bregman is ever going to hit 41 home runs again. Do you sense a decline in performance is already underway, or do you think that's premature? Like maybe the slow start had something to do with that narrative that's now out there that Alex Bregman is already declining. What do you think?
I think it's a tough question to answer. Like you said, and like I mentioned earlier, Bregman tends to be a slow starter, so maybe his overall numbers don't look as good. But then when you look at his numbers the last 3 months, 4 months of the season, whatever the case may be, they're pretty impressive, or at least more impressive than his overall numbers. Yeah, I think it's a tricky thing to say. I think when you think about Bregman's power, he's never been the guy who's had the tape measure home run sort of power. That's never been his game. I mean, he hits home runs and usually pulls them. That's where his power is, and certainly benefited from having the Crawford boxes at Minute Maid Park and having that short porch in left field. That definitely helped him. But yeah, he's never been a guy who, like you think about somebody like Aaron Judge or even Isaac Paredes, who's been known to hit some tape measure home runs. That's never really been Bregman's game. So, will he hit 41 home runs again? Maybe. It might be tougher to do it in a park like Comerica Park in Detroit, which is more of a pitcher's park to begin with. But okay, maybe those become doubles off the wall instead of home runs, for instance. So, I think that's a possibility. And I think the fact that, again, Bregman's defense is excellent, so you always have that. And I think the overall baseline is going to be pretty good with Alex Bregman based on the way he works and just based on what he's shown to this point. Yeah, is he going to finish second in the AL MVP voting again? Again, maybe, but I don't think that's why you sign him. I don't think that's the expectation you have.
I am curious about Comerica Park. You did mention that he's always tinkering with his swing. With that said, do you think he's the type of hitter that would be able to adjust to Comerica Park? Like, he took advantage of those Crawford boxes in Houston, and every good right-handed hitter should be doing that. But if he goes to Comerica Park, where it's more spacious, which maybe limits some of that home run opportunity, but creates more opportunities for doubles, could Alex Bregman transform himself from a pull hitter to a gap-to-gap hitter? Like, is he adjustable like that, do you think?
I think he is, and I think he's smart enough to understand his home ballpark. And it's not like Bregman can't hit the ball the other way. He definitely can. And I think, honestly, when you think about some of Bregman's struggles at different times, getting off to slow starts with the Astros, in some instances, maybe it is attributable to the fact that he was trying to pull more than he should have been. And if you're at a ballpark that's more spacious, particularly left field, maybe that gets you to not pull as much. And again, I think Bregman's a smart enough hitter to understand that and be like, okay, they're really spacious gaps at Comerica Park, for instance. So maybe I should gear my swing toward shooting those gaps. I could definitely see that happening. And I think when you look at the AL Central, Kauffman Stadium's a pretty big ballpark in Kansas City with spacious gaps as well. Target Field certainly is more of a home run park if you're a left-handed hitter with the shorter porch. And Bregman, I can remember a few balls Bregman's hit off the high wall in right center at Target Field. So I think also not just Comerica Park should he wind up with the Tigers, but also when you look at some of the other ballparks in that division, I think that certainly could factor into Bregman's thinking and just, thinking about his overall intelligence about hitting and what might work best for him.
I love the defense, and I know you love the defense, but do you have any long-term concerns with the elbow? He had bone chips removed from his right elbow in 2019 and 2024. Is that something to be aware of from a defensive standpoint with throwing from third base, or not so much?
I don't think so. He got it taken care of. And so, had the surgery this offseason to remove that. And so as far as baseball surgeries go, it's one of the least invasive sort of procedure. So I don't think it will affect him. What we were hearing during the season last year, the latter part of the year with Bregman's elbow, was that it affected him more at the plate than it did defensively, than it did on throws. So I think it probably did affect him on throws to a certain extent. How can it not when you've got bone chips in your elbow? But apparently it affected him more at the plate. But if you can look at it another way and say, well, the fact that he's gotten that taken care of, maybe he'll be able to get off to a better start and be able to be more productive offensively than he was last year.
If the Tigers get Alex Bregman, what should they expect from him, both on the field and behind the scenes?
Like we were talking about, certainly the leadership, the professionalism, someone who's always going to be accountable. someone who cares, who wants to win, and who wants to be successful. I mean, last year was the only full season Bregman played in the big leagues in which he didn't make it to a league championship series. And that bothers him. That might motivate him as much as anything else that he does. And I think there's also something to be said for he's played in big games. He's played in the World Series and has performed well in big games in his career. So there isn't a stage that you can put Alex Bregman on where the bright lights are going to bother him. He may not succeed, but it's not going to be because he's shrunk from the moment.
Last question, and then we'll get you out of here. What was it like working with AJ Hinch from 2015 through 2019? And do you have any favorite memories covering him?
Well, AJ was great to cover. For most of his time as Astros manager, I did the manager's show with him every day for Astros radio. And he always had an answer for any question you had. He got me to think about the game in a little bit of a different way, because when you think about the period when he was Astros manager, it was when you started to see more teams embracing analytics and embracing a lot of the shifting. And he was someone who could kind of blend the old school and the new school, if you will, because not only did he have a good grasp of the analytics and the numbers and percentages, but he also had a good grasp on how to handle players and how to handle a clubhouse. I remember, one memory I have of AJ, I remember having a conversation with him one day about off days he gives to everyday players and how he decides when he tells those players they're going to get a day off. And I remember he was talking about one player. He said, now, if you tell this player on Monday that he's going to have an off day on Thursday, then you're going to get even more out of him on those days leading up to that Thursday, because he knows, okay, I'm going to be off Thursday. Kind of feels like, all right, I can empty the tank a little bit knowing that I'm going to have a rest. Whereas he contrasted that player with another player. He was like, oh, you got to text him the night before, because if you text him 3 days before, he's going to be in my office every single day leading up to that, begging not to have a day off. You think about things like that and the psychology of dealing with a clubhouse and managing players. AJ is about as good as anyone with that. And I think we saw that with the run that the Tigers had in 2024. I don't think that's as possible without AJ being able to combine the dealing with players, dealing with the clubhouse, along with the information and the analytics and the numbers and getting the best matchups.
It certainly seemed like he was pushing all the right buttons last year, no doubt about it. All right, Robert, that's all we have for you. Thanks for joining and explaining everything there is to know about Alex Bregman. We'll see if Bregman to Detroit actually happens. It seems like a perfect fit for the Tigers. Thanks again for joining the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Evan.
Everyone, that was Robert Ford, play-by-play radio broadcaster for the Houston Astros. We have more to discuss about the Tigers, highlighted by some bullpen talk. But first, let's take a break.
All right, we're back. I'd like to thank Robert Ford, radio voice of the Houston Astros, another person that seems to like Alex Bregman. All right, so we're going to try to ask a few interesting questions and get the heck out of here. It's the middle of the damn night, and we're talking baseball. So you know how much we got to love some baseball. So a big question going into spring training that I'm sure will sort itself out, and it will sort itself out in a good way, is should Beau Brieske be the closer? I mean, the Tigers have perfected something Tampa always claimed that they could do. They basically had no closer last year, or they had multiple closers. Brieske was unbelievable with an ERA of slightly above 1 in the month of September. And then in the playoffs, allowed 1 hit in his 6 appearances. So Beau Brieske is looking pretty tasty these days. And my question to you, do you think he could maintain that level of dominance as a closer in a more fixed situation, or you think they'll continue to use him, trying to be him and Holton as leverage guys and still try to slot Foley in to throw the 9th inning? Because he actually did a pretty good job until he just seemed to kind of fall off a ledge with his control, but otherwise was not too bad as a closer. And it lets you have two leverage relievers.
For me, the answer to that is no. I don't think Beau Brieske should be the closer in 2025. When I look at the full body of work, he doesn't miss enough bats. He walks too many guys. He doesn't get enough ground balls. Beau Brieske is below average in walk rate, whiff rate, and ground ball rate. Those weaknesses don't profile well to me in a closer role. And then you look at the relievers that the Tigers do have, and you ask that big question, like, do they need to add to their bullpen this offseason, or can they build a bullpen from their pitching depth? Like, I know we're going to get to that, but you got Beau Brieske, Jason Foley, Tyler Holton, Will Vest. You got those guys locked in. I don't think I trust Jason Foley to be the closer. Not so sure I trust Will Vest to be the closer. Not yet. I mean, he really stood out to me with his fastball and his slider. Two great pitches. He did a great job, but I don't know if I trust Will Vest as a closer. Not so sure about Beau Brieske as a closer. And Tyler Holton, they love using him all over the place. They're not going to make him the closer. But Mark, you can defend Beau Brieske, and I like Beau Brieske. I think he's a great pitcher. I think there are many different ways that you can use him as a weapon. He is a weapon, and he is a lock to be in the bullpen. No question about it. But you can change my mind on Beau Brieske being the closer of the Tigers in 2025. I'll listen. I'm just not so sure if I'll agree.
I'm not even sure AJ Hinch knows who the closer is going to be in 2025, but I can almost guarantee you that what he is going to say when you get to Lakeland is, somebody wants to close games for me and they show me that they deserve to be the guy, that's going to be the guy. So I think, what we saw in August and September from Will Vest was holy smokes. But the weird part about how Hinch likes to use his bullpen is he loves guys to bring in leverage in this, even as early as the sixth, 7th, and 8th inning. He's just trying to quell every rally. He thinks the easy inning is the 9th inning. So it'll be fascinating to see how he structures his bullpen in 2025. Do I think Beau Brieske will be the closer? I would give it about a 1 in 5 chance of him being the closer. I still think that, believe it or not, Jason Foley, if he's healthy, there was something missing from Jason Foley after the 1st of May. And you just never know about relievers. Relievers are so fickle from year to year. Their stuff changes, and it'll be fascinating to see how it works out. I think it's unlikely that Brieske's the closer. I mean, I'd like to leverage on what he did last year, but I just don't see AJ doing the bullpen that way. All right. I want to ask you another question. Do you think the Tigers need to add from free agency to still upgrade their bullpen this offseason, or can they build a bullpen from their existing pitching depth?
That's a really interesting question. I kind of teased it, a minute ago, but you do have Beau Brieske, Jason Foley, Tyler Holton, Will Vest. 4 of 8 relievers are locked in. They are locked in to the situation that they have with their bullpen. So you've got 4 guys locked in. The other options, Sean Gunther, Brennan Hannafy, Alex Lang, Chase Lee, Alex Faedo, Mason Engler. Like, those are your other options. I'm worried the Tigers lack a legit swing and miss closer type reliever for the end of the game, which means they need to make an addition. Maybe that's externally, or should they look internally? When you look at the free agent options, left-handed reliever Tanner Scott, elite fastball slider combo, fastball average is 97, slider has a 40% whiff rate. I've seen him projected for like 4 years, $65 million. We'll see if he actually gets that, but he's going to be the highest paid reliever this offseason. I also like Kenley Jansen, right-handed reliever. He's a proven closer, throws 85% cutters. It's a great pitch. Probably a 2-year deal, but maybe a 1-year deal as the offseason lingers on. Right-handed reliever Paul Sewald, you're probably getting him at a discount because coming off a bad season, it's going to be a 1-year deal. Good fastball with a great slider, also has a changeup. Left-handed reliever Andrew Chafin loves playing for the Tigers because Detroit is close to his family in Ohio, so it's easy to land him. You can't deny the 34.5% whiff rate, which ranked in the 96th percentile last season. Walks, though, have been an issue for him in the past 2 years. They weren't before that, but walks were an issue for Andrew Chafin the past 2 years. That's a little bit concerning to me. And then also right-handed reliever Kirby Yates. Like Chafin, Yates is an elite bat misser. His 33.6% whiff rate ranked in the 94th percentile last season. But he has the same issue. He walks too many batters. And for him, it's been a problem since 2020. So the Yates walk problem predates the Chafin walk problem. So more walk issues with Kirby Yates and Andrew Chafin. Just something to be aware of there. I don't like Carlos Estevez. I think he's overrated. So those are some of the external options on the free agent market. Or do the Tigers have all the relievers they need in their pitching depth? Because the Tigers have 4 starters locked in: Tarik Skubal, Reese Olson, Alex Cobb, Jackson Jobe. At least 6 pitchers will battle for the final spot: Kader Montero, Brant Herter, Ty Madden, Kenta Maeda, Casey Mize, Matt Manning. Do the Tigers have a high leverage reliever in Casey Mize or Matt Manning? Maybe. It's interesting to think about.
That's definitely something I've been thinking about. So I just, it's hard for me to fathom. Yeah, that Casey Mize is going to go to Toledo. It's just, as a starter, as starter depth, I would just consider that just a massive failure. And I'm sure Casey Mize he would be pretty mad. I mean, he threw over 100 innings in the major leagues last year. I can't see that yet. I still have dreams of Kader Montero improving his changeup more and becoming really, really good. So, the bottom line is they need a bat mister down there. I'm a big fan of the idea of Kirby Yates. He fits in perfectly with what they don't have, and he throws an inning that nobody really has laid claim to. I think the Tigers are shockingly high on Brandon Hanafy, and I understand it. He did an amazingly good job for them last year when no one really expected it. He has an elite sinker, and he did his job so well. I mean, we kind of were biting our fingernails when he would be coming in sometimes, and he always seemed to ring the bell when he came in. So we'll see. These are why they pay people big money to be Pobos. And, but yeah, I mean, I have dreams of Casey Mize throwing 99 in the 9th inning. I think that would be a lot of fun to find out. All right, it's time to get out of here. We've done another edition of Days of Roar after midnight. I want to remind everybody to like, rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify, especially YouTube, and you can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at freak.com. I'd like to thank our editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the man who saves us every single damn week, the magic man, Robin Chan. Love to both my grandsons. Shout out to Savannah Petzold and a happy new year to Savannah Petzold. Until next week, peace.